You've been lied to. The people you fear the most might be the ones sent to heal you. It sounds crazy, right? But think about it. Why does someone who speaks differently, prays differently, or dresses differently make your chest tighten? Is it instinct? Or is it something deeper? Something buried inside you, passed down by voices you don't even recognize anymore. Carl Jung believed that the parts of ourselves we fail to face don't disappear. They come back, disguised as strangers, immigrants, outsiders. And every time we reject them, we're not protecting our identity. We're rejecting our own evolution. This video is not about politics. It's about fear. A fear that's been sold to you for years. A fear that's quietly destroying your peace, your empathy, your chance to become whole. So if you've ever caught yourself thinking, they don't belong here, maybe it's time to ask, which part of me doesn't belong, Saland, in my own life? Because what if I told you that your discomfort isn't proof that they're wrong? It's a signal that you're ready to grow. And if you stay with me until the end of this video, you'll not only understand the psychology behind prejudice, you'll finally discover how to reclaim the parts of yourself you've spent years hiding. Have you ever felt a sudden discomfort around someone who looked, spoke, or acted differently from you, without any real reason? That tightness in your chest, that subtle need to move away or close off, isn't just about the other person. It's a window into a war happening inside you. Carl Jung once said that what you don't face in yourself will appear in your life as fate. And what if the immigrant you silently judge, the stranger you avoid, is simply the mirror of your own unlived life? This fear, quiet, socially acceptable, often rationalized, reveals something deeper: your fragmented self. Not because you're evil or ignorant, but because no one ever taught you how to see the stranger inside. The human mind wasn't designed to crave sameness. It evolved to learn from what's different. But the modern ego, trained in fear, programmed by media, and shaped by tribal thinking, has learned to protect itself at all costs. The irony is, it's protecting you from yourself. When a man from another country walks down your street speaking a different language, your reaction isn't just about nationality. It's about what he awakens in you: insecurity, unfamiliarity, and a quiet reminder of everything you've suppressed. The shadow self, the part of you you've rejected, uses others as screens. Projection isn't just a psychological term. It's a survival mechanism your ego uses to escape growth. Let me paint a picture. Imagine a factory worker in northern England who grew up with the same people all his life. One day, a new neighbor arrives from Syria. He's quiet, respectful, and hardworking. But something about him sparks irritation. He doesn't understand why. The truth? That Syrian man represents a part of him that had the courage to start over, to leave the familiar, to face chaos with strength. And that reflection is unbearable to someone stuck in routine, fear, and frustration. This is not a story about politics. It's about the human soul resisting evolution. Because real transformation demands pain, and the ego hates pain. The shadow self, according to Jung, isn't some dark monster hiding in the corner. It's everything you didn't allow yourself to be. The artist you silenced. The tears you never cried. The dreams you traded for safety. And when someone walks into your life embodying that repressed version, your first instinct is rejection, not of them, of you, of the version of yourself that could have been. It's easier to call them outsider than to admit you abandoned your own freedom. That's why fear of others is never about them. It's a compass pointing to the very part of you begging to be seen, held, and healed. This insight isn't meant to shame you. It's meant to awaken you. Because once you see the pattern, you gain the power to break it. And if you've ever found yourself thinking, I just don't feel comfortable around people like that, ask yourself, which part of your identity feels threatened? Who taught you that comfort was more important than expansion? The system? Your family? The TV? Or was it just the exhausted, overworked version of you trying to find control in a chaotic world? Either way, it's not your fault. But now, it is your responsibility. Because you can't heal what you keep blaming on others. There's freedom in realizing that the problem is not out there. But freedom is scary. It means you have to look in the mirror and face the fact that most of your enemies were just messengers. They came to show you what you buried. And the world keeps sending more, hoping one day you'll listen. A foreign accent, a different religion, a strange behavior. These are not threats. They are invitations. And if you accept them, you don't just become more tolerant. You become more whole, because every person you fear carries the exact medicine you need to complete yourself. That's the painful paradox of individuation. You don't need a psychology degree to apply this. Next time you feel that sudden resistance to someone different, stop. Breathe. Ask yourself, what part of me feels exposed right now? You might be surprised by the answer. Maybe it's your fear of failure, or your shame about where you came from, or your envy toward someone who lives freely. Whatever it is, it's a clue. Follow it. Reflect on it. Even talk about it with someone you trust. Shadow work is not a buzzword. It's survival. And in a society constantly telling you who to hate, learning to love what's unfamiliar is a revolutionary act. What if I told you that the person you fear the most might be the person you need the most? What if the stranger is your guide, and the discomfort is the doorway? The ego will scream, resist, and rationalize. But your deeper self, the one you've ignored for years, is already listening. And once that part of you awakens, nothing will ever feel the same. Not because the world changed, but because you stopped living in fear of your own reflection. And when that inner wall starts to crack, you'll begin to see something that the next chapter will expose in full clarity. The dangerous illusion of a strong ego. Most people believe that racism, xenophobia, and hatred for outsiders come from ignorance. But what if they come from something deeper, something more fragile? A weak ego. Not weak in the sense of passive, but weak because it doesn't know who it is. And when you don't know who you are, you need enemies to remind you who you think you should be. Jung understood this well. The ego isn't your enemy, but it can become one if it's not connected to your full self. And in that state of confusion, you start to see threat everywhere, especially in what you don't understand. A man raised in a conservative neighborhood, working long hours in a dead-end job, hears a foreign language on the subway. His body tenses. He doesn't know why, but the thought creeps in. They're changing everything. The truth is, nothing outside him is changing. What's really shifting is internal. That voice, that fear, is his ego panicking. Because the identity he built, around sameness, tradition, routine, can't survive in a world that forces him to question it. And so, to avoid collapse, the ego blames. It scapegoats. It creates narratives where the foreigner becomes the villain, just so the self doesn't have to evolve. This is why xenophobia often spikes during social instability. When people feel like they're losing their jobs, their culture, their ground, what they're really losing is a sense of control, and the ego cannot live without control. But here's the thing, that control is already an illusion. The economy was never stable. Culture was never static. Identity was never fixed. What was fixed was the idea that we are not them. And when that idea starts to dissolve, fear takes over. Not because the other is dangerous, but because you've been taught that your worth depends on being not them. Carl Jung described the individuation process as a lifelong path toward becoming whole. That means embracing both the light and the dark, the familiar and the foreign, inside and out. But to the fragile ego, wholeness feels like death, because the ego survives by separating, labeling, and clinging to identity. It says, I'm American, not Mexican. I'm Christian, not Muslim. I'm straight, not queer. But these labels are not truths. They're defense mechanisms, shields used to protect an inner world that's never been truly explored. And the more you fear difference, the more proof you have that your ego is running the show. Think of a child raised with only one kind of food. The first time they see something new, they say, "You." Not because it tastes bad, but because it's foreign. That's how most adults react to culture. To difference. They've been fed one flavor their whole life, and now confuse comfort with truth. But here's the danger. When comfort becomes your religion, empathy dies. You stop being curious. You stop listening. And slowly, the stranger becomes an enemy, when in reality they were always your teacher. The ego will lie to you. It will say, "Protect your way of life." But what it really means is, protect your fear. This doesn't mean you should dissolve your identity. It means you should stop worshiping it. Identity isn't a prison. It's a starting point. Something to be understood, questioned, and expanded. A strong ego doesn't need enemies to survive. It doesn't collapse when someone wears different clothes, prays to a different god, or speaks a different tongue. It stands tall because it's rooted in truth, not imitation. And truth is inclusive. It makes room for complexity, for nuance, for contradiction. The more you know yourself, the less you need to fear others, because you realize we're all walking contradictions trying to make sense of the same pain. Practical steps? Start by paying attention to your internal reactions, not the loud ones, the subtle ones. When someone different walks into the room, what story does your mind tell? Do you tense up? Do you assume things? That's your ego talking. Catch it, question it, and don't shame yourself. Just observe. Keep a journal. Reflect on the first time you were taught to fear the other. Who said it? Why did you believe it? What were they afraid of? This is how real shadow work begins. By tracing your fear back to its roots and realizing it never belonged to you in the first place. You can't fix a fragile ego by building bigger walls. You fix it by going deeper. You don't need a revolution outside. You need one within. Because the ego will always try to preserve itself at the cost of your soul. And the price is too high. The cost is empathy, connection, peace. But if you dare to challenge that inner voice, if you choose to meet the other with presence instead of projection, something strange happens. You start to feel whole, less reactive, more grounded. And that's exactly the feeling we'll need to explore in the next chapter, where you'll discover how embracing the unknown can heal the very parts of yourself you've been taught to reject. Picture this: a man working 2 jobs, barely keeping the lights on, sits alone after dinner scrolling through the news. He sees unfamiliar faces, unfamiliar languages, unfamiliar customs, and something inside tightens. But what if that discomfort isn't a warning sign, but a wound? What if the presence of the other doesn't threaten you, but shows you where you're still broken? Carl Jung didn't see the foreigner as an invader. He saw them as a messenger, a symbol of what you've denied, rejected, or buried. Because what we hate in others often points directly to the parts of us we never had the courage to face. The process of individuation is not about becoming someone new. It's about reclaiming who you've always been. But parts of you have been lost, hidden under shame, fear, and social conditioning. And those missing pieces often reappear disguised as other people. The quiet man you avoid might reflect the silence you fear in yourself. The confident woman you judge might awaken the voice you were taught to shut down. You think you're reacting to them, but you're actually being called to yourself. The shadow self doesn't just live in darkness. It lives in everything you were told to avoid. Let me tell you a story. In a working-class neighborhood in the American South, an older woman used to glare at her new neighbor, a young immigrant mother who barely spoke English. Months went by with nothing but cold glances. One afternoon, the woman's dog escaped into the street, and the immigrant mother ran, caught it, and gently brought it back. That act shattered the wall, not because it was dramatic, but because it exposed a truth. Humanity isn't foreign. Connection is not a matter of language, it's a matter of courage. And the courage to embrace the other is often the beginning of self-forgiveness. Jung believed that healing doesn't come from perfection. It comes from integration. And integration requires contradiction. You cannot become whole if you only accept the parts of you that look like you, sound like you, or vote like you. Wholeness is messy. It demands that you sit with discomfort long enough to understand its message. And once you see that the person you once feared is actually a part of your psyche trying to return home, everything changes. They are not the intruder. They are the invitation to stretch, to listen, to rebuild yourself from the inside out. It's easy to build identity around pain. Many do. My trauma made me who I am. My roots are my truth. But here's the catch. The same identity that protects you can also imprison you. And every time you reject someone different, you're reinforcing the bars of your own mental cage. Growth doesn't mean losing yourself. It means expanding beyond the story you've been told. It means daring to love what you once feared. And not just to look woke or tolerant, but because you want to be free, truly free. From fear, from resentment, from the smallness that's been passed down to you for generations. When you embrace the other, you're not erasing your past, you're enriching your future. You're making space for something bigger than the old labels, human connection. That doesn't mean agreeing with everyone. It means learning to hold two truths in one heart. This is who I am, and that is who they are. No need to convert, no need to dominate, just presence. And in that presence, the ego loosens. The projection fades, and the war inside you begins to quiet down. Not because everything is perfect, but because you're no longer fighting yourself in the shape of someone else. So how do you start? You don't need a grand gesture, just a willingness to pause, to ask yourself, what am I so afraid of? And when the answer comes, don't run, sit with it, name it. Then do something small, but different. Talk to someone outside your circle. Listen to a story you wouldn't normally hear. Visit a place where you don't feel in control, not to punish yourself, but to wake yourself up. The more you lean in, the more you find that the foreign becomes familiar, and the unfamiliar becomes sacred. That's the work. It's slow, silent, and powerful, because in the end, wholeness isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming real, about owning every part of you, even the ones that scare you. And nothing reveals those parts faster than someone who sees the world differently. The stranger is not the threat. The stranger is the door. And if you have the courage to walk through it, you might just discover the person you've been searching for all along. But to open that door fully, we need to step back and reflect on everything we've avoided, starting with the parts of you that still wait in silence to be called home. You were never broken, just fragmented, taught to fear the pieces of yourself that didn't fit the mold, raised to believe that difference equals danger, conditioned to protect an identity that was built more on survival than truth. But today, maybe something clicked. Maybe you saw that the stranger outside is just a reflection of the stranger within. And maybe, just maybe, you're ready to stop running. So ask yourself, which part of yourself are you still afraid to meet? And what would your life look like if you stopped fighting what feels unfamiliar and started listening? What if peace isn't found in building walls, but in learning to live with open hands, open eyes, and an open heart? If this message resonated with you, I want you to take one small step today. Write down one belief you've inherited about the other, and question it. Then, share your thoughts in the comments. Let's build a space for reflection, not reaction. And if you want to keep growing, learning, and waking up to yourself, subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications, because the journey to becoming whole has only just begun.